Here I'm going to do an experiment on how the Incans got the stone from the quarry to their building site. Let's say we're going to build Olatambo or Sexy Woman, or I don't know how they say it. Alright? Now, in order to figure out something, sometimes if we recreate it, we can see something we don't see in our minds. So let's just pretend that we're in Peru somewhere, and this right here, I don't know if any of this will work, but we're going to try. This is the quarry site right here. And we have a bunch of stones which have fallen off of the, away from the mountain, so they're not cut out of the mountain. We know they did that. Now these stones right here are dressed and ready for transport, except because remember they had 6 million people, and we know they did this. Let's just say that this stone right here, just like the Lonely Stone or Tired Stone, is I don't know, 5 feet tall. Let's say it's 15 feet long, and it's partially square, like what they had at Peru in the historical record. Now, we know the Peruvians had rope. Okay? We'll just say that's our special rope. Now, it took, I don't know, 1,800 guys, so they must have either had a lot of rope or they must have had a harness and everything else. That's not the point. Anyway, we're going to rope this up and take it to the Olatambo fortress site. Okay, so we've got this 50-ton stone all hooked up to our special stone rope. Remember, the rope probably didn't look like this. We don't know what it looked like, so we have to keep an open mind there. Now we have all the 1,800 guys, and they're pulling. And of course, I don't think it... Remember, they moved it over a number of kilometers, right? And they didn't have MTV, they didn't have Monday Night Football or Peruvian soccer to watch. Their mind was on one thing only, and that was eating, sleeping, and doing their thing for the community. So who knows how long it took them to do this. And as you can see, I'm just one guy pulling it. But I will tell you that I did find some evidence in some of the Peruvian Incan things that I noted. There is some evidence to believe that a great distant relative of Chuck Norris was back there at that time, dressed up in a llama suit, pulling all these blocks one by one. He did all of it. But that's just another theory. Okay, now we're pulling this over to Olatambo, wherever the hell that is. Okay? Remember, the Incas were just like me. And they sometimes they put it on gravel. And they pulled it along. And well, let's see. They pulled it along. Right. Trying to find a suitable Inca fortress site here. Okay. Let's say it's right here. Okay. They pull it over to here, and they stop. Here's where we're going to start our little experiment. But first we have to figure out what the Incans had on hand for sure. This is what's called a Plumb Bob. I've had this thing for 100 years, never used it, and it is probably older than my grandmother. But we know they had these. And we know they had different size ropes because we found them on the Incan mummies. Now with our 21st century mind, if you look very closely, let's see what we can do here. This is your standard nylon. Just say you can't tell the scale, so you don't know what size it is, but look at the braid in it, okay? Now we look in the braid of this really, really old. See, it's a little different. Okay, no problem. Now we look at the modern nylon rope you can buy at Home Depot. If you'll notice the braid in it, notice how it's braided? That's probably a stronger rope. Now we look at another type of rope. Now we know they had different kind of ropes. We know they had a lot of rope. They knew how to make ropes because they used them for their bridges, right? Okay, so we knew that. But look at the braid on this one. Now what its strength is, I don't know. That's the point. The point is, in our minds, we think that all rope looks like this, bigger, smaller. And then we call it string, but we don't know what they called it. There is no surviving rope from that time because it's organic and it disappeared. It broke down. Now, my theory, and so far it's held water, so far, is that we can imagine that they didn't pull this giant stone with this little tiny string. They must have used a bigger string. Now, what's it like to pull a 100-ton stone with 2,000 men? Has it ever been done? Has it ever been recorded? No, it hasn't. So we really don't know. We just imagine. So, this is my theory. If the Incas used a rope saw, and what I mean by that is like this. This is a rat tail file. Okay, and if you'll notice how serrated it is. This right here is a chainsaw file. Same thing, only smaller in diameter, and it's finer. This is a square file, which couldn't have been used. Now what if the Incas, in my theory, had a way to make their ropes into a file-like, make them act like a file in order to cut through the rock, to, who knows, maybe shape it. They could have used, what I mean is, the Incans had access to ropes of all diameters. And by diameter, I mean roundness, okay? Now, we don't know how they made them or how dense they were. We don't know what the cutting agent was. But this is a rat tail file. They had no metal tools that that they've dug up. So we know that they probably didn't do that. We know that the stone was cut in a certain method. Okay? Now this is my theory. Of course, I don't know because I've never been down there. And I've tried to stay away from Incan culture because the less I know about it, the less that my mind will tell me they couldn't have done it. Now suppose that they had one of their rope cutting, or excuse me, rope saws, as I call it. I don't know what you call it, but here's the thing they're going to cut right here. Okay, I'll put this right here. Now you say to yourself, no, that couldn't work. Okay, you destroy the rope, it wouldn't work. You figure there's one guy right here and one guy over here. Of course that wouldn't work. You just do that and it would fray it and destroy it. But let me ask you a question. Now this is something that's gone through my mind. Has anyone ever seen a rope used to cut stone? I haven't. Now, let's put it this way. Suppose that they could make a rope strong enough, and they use sand or some kind of a cutting agent, clay, whatever they had. Remember, it's whatever they had. Now, suppose that this is just a theory too, but okay, we got this rock right here, right? Now suppose you have 100 men on this side, and you have 100 men on this other side, all right? And they're putting pressure right here, all right? Now, we know that, I believe in physics, if you have a rope that's cutting down, not a rope, I'm sorry, if you have a force that's cutting straight down, that it will cut straight, I think. But see, they didn't have diamond tip saws. All they had were ropes. And they knew how to make ropes. The only problem with this theory is that they could not cut a straight line. Now, every one of the Inca cuts that I've seen, now suppose they used a large, once they figured out if they could cut rock, then all they had to do was apply the technique to everything they did, to a greater or smaller detail. Does that make sense? So suppose we got a rat tail file this big, and they've discovered how to do it. They had 100 or 200 years to figure it out. All right? They've got someone up here pouring some kind of fluid on it, or to keep the rope, just like a file, keep it nice and, to keep it from overheating. Now the abrasive would do a couple things, in my opinion. Of course I don't know. Now I don't know the hardness of rocks either, or the rocks that they used. But they used different rocks in different areas. I imagine some were easier than others. But a number of researchers said that stone vitrification, or burning of the rock on the edge right here, the edge of the cut, like right here, melting, half melting. Now what would cause that? A great amount of friction would cause that, right? Great amount of friction. So we have 100 men, maybe 1,000 men on each side. It didn't matter, because they had hundreds and hundreds of horsepower in intelligent human labor, and all the time in the world to build their world, and that was their world. They didn't know anything about anything else. They didn't know of any place else. That was just their world, and we know they did all this. So suppose we have all these men and they're sawing down through this rock. Okay? This gets interesting. I don't. This whole theory could be bullshit, but I haven't found a flaw in it yet. Okay, so, and it's a great mystery. So the Incas cut down. Let's say we take our other stone here. Remember, they used the same kind of stones. They didn't use a mix and match of stones. And I thought, well, why didn't they do that? Well, okay, because they couldn't go down to Giant Rocks or us and get different varieties. They had to drag what was available close to them to their building site. Drag them. Or Chuck Norris's great-grandfather didn't. That's another mystery. Anyway, let's suppose that they have the rocks right here that are different. You see that? It's not straight down. Now let's suppose we put them right next to each other. Okay, look at that. It's not straight down, right? Okay. Now, this is all part of my theory. I've been working on it. I don't know, maybe I'm working on it. Okay, so then they took their rope saw right here. Right, and they put it over this rope saw. Now remember that to use a rope saw, as I call it, rope saw, they would have to get in front of the object and behind it. If these rocks were up against a wall or something like that, it couldn't be done. And I have not studied enough Incan pictures, because those damn tourists take pictures of the same damn rocks. They won't show any really interesting rocks. Okay, we continue.